Hi friends! Today we're going to be making these really cute macrame pineapple keychains. Now for this tutorial I'm going to be making the smaller version of it, but if you want to make the larger one, all you have to do is just add a little bit more yellow rope. Okay, so let's get started. I'm going to be working off of this keychain, and all it is a simple lobster claw hook attached to a keychain and attached to a larger jump ring. A small keychain like this is recommended because all we're doing is attaching one cord onto it. And speaking of which, we're going to fold our green cord in half to find the center, then take that center loop and thread it through your jump ring, and then thread your long tail ends through that loop. This is called a lark's head knot. Once that's secure, grab your second strand of green rope, fold it in half to find the center, and then place the center behind your first two original cords. Next, we're going to tie what I like to call a floating square knot. Now, I'm pretty sure I'm the only person that calls it that, so don't come at me if you go and Google it to find further instructions, because I think I coined that term. Anywhere else, it's really just a regular square knot, only you're tying it around your first cord and it's not already attached. Alright, so now that that disclaimer is out of the way, slide it up to the top, and then we're going to tie two more regular square knots directly underneath it. If you ever find that I'm going too fast for you, feel free to adjust the speed of this video by tapping the three dots on the top right corner. Also, I'd like to mention that this is a moderate difficulty level project. Even though it does have many easy, simple beginner knots, the way that we incorporate it can be a little tricky. So I don't recommend this project for an absolute beginner. Alright, so grab your next strand of green cord and fold it in half to find the center. Place that center behind your two middle cords, and tie another floating square knot. Slide that knot all the way up to the top and then divide your cords into 4. And forget about the first two original strands of cord, we're only going to be working off of the 4 bottom ones. Grab another strand of green cord and attach another floating square knot to the left side set of your 4 cords. And finally, with your last strand of green cord, you're going to attach it to the right hand side, just like we did for the left. Alright, so it should look something like this. But now what we need to do is flip it upside down. Once everything is flipped around, you want to take the 4 top cords and move them up and out of the way. We don't need them anymore, we're going to work on the side cords. Working on the left hand side first, we're going to take the very bottom cord and we're going to move it all the way across to the top. This is going to be our filler cord. And we're going to tie 2 double half-hitch knots. When you're holding your filler cord, make sure that it's angled up and towards the left-hand side. If you're enjoying this tutorial so far, please do me a huge favor and give it a thumbs up. When you give it a thumbs up, that tells the YouTube gods that this video is somewhat okay and will show it to other people, which in return helps me and it helps other people looking for a pineapple keychain. Alright, so for the next row we're going to repeat the same thing, grabbing the rightmost bottom cord, crossing it over to the top as your filler cord, and then tying 2 double half-hitch knots. Okay, great. So for the next row, we're going to do the same thing. Okay, so that completes the left-hand side. Now we're going to repeat the same exact thing, but to the right. Once you completed both sides, we're going to unpin it from our board. And what we're going to do is we're going to trim off the excess cord, but we're going to leave those top 4 cords and only trim the 3 on each side. When you're trimming it, you want to leave just the tiniest little bit of a tail, because what we're going to do next is we're going to fuse it together by melting it with a lighter. And here's the part where I make my disclaimer. Make sure you're using synthetic cord. If you use cotton materials or any natural fiber, you're going to catch it on fire. Only synthetic will melt. Now, I know you know that, but I had to say it. We don't want any accidents happening on Simply Inspired Macrame YouTube channel. Anyways, repeat the same thing to the other side. Alright, so now we get to use our yellow cord. So grab a strand and fold it in half to find the center, pin that center down onto your board, and repeat with your second strand of yellow cord. And now what we're going to do is tie a square knot. I've listed all the materials that I use for this project in the description box, but if you're using the same exact yellow cord that I'm using, you might find that it's a little difficult to work with. So even though I did list it in the description box, I don't necessarily recommend it. It's not the worst cord, but it's also not the greatest either. Once you're finished your square knot, you want to unpin it from your board and then give those 2 center cords a little bit of a tug, and that will get rid of those little loops at the top. Place that square knot right underneath the crown of your pineapple and pin it down. Next, grab the first yellow cord and place it right underneath your 2 green cords. We're going to tie a vertical double half hitch knot. Actually, we're going to be tying a left-facing vertical double half hitch knot, and that does matter. I'll show you why in a minute. And on a side note, I do have a tutorial on how to tie a vertical double half hitch knot if you need a little bit more help. I'll leave a link for that tutorial in the cards above. Okay, so once you've finished tying your left-facing vertical double half hitch knot, we're going to tie a right-facing vertical double half hitch knot. Working with the same exact cord, you want to move it over to the right-hand side now behind your green cords, and then make your loop on the right-hand side. Now, the reason why this is important is because it angles your cord towards the middle, and the middle is where the pineapple is. Okay, so let's do the same thing but to the other side. So for the other side, you want to tie a right-facing vertical double half hitch knot first, followed by a left-facing vertical double half hitch knot. Honestly, I think that there should be an award for me being able to say vertical double half hitch knot so many times in a row without getting my tongue tied. Because if it was a sport, I would get the medal, for sure. Alright, so let's grab another strand of yellow cord and place the center behind the first 2 cords of yellow and tie another floating square knot. Slide that knot all the way up to the top, and then repeat the same thing to the next set of yellow cords. Working with the very first strand of yellow cord, we're going to tie another left-facing vertical double half hitch knot, followed by a right-facing vertical double half hitch knot. And of course, do the same thing to the right hand side, but this time tie a right facing vertical double half hitch knot followed by a left facing vertical double half hitch knot. Move the first two and the last two cords out of the way, and then with the 4 cords in the middle, we're going to tie a regular square knot. Then we're going to increase our row by attaching a floating square knot on the first 2 and the last 2 cords of this row. Next, we're going to tie our 2 vertical double half hitch knots on either side of our pineapple. We're going to leave out the first 2 and the last 2 cords in this row like we did with the previous row, but only this time we're going to tie 2 square knots with the remainder 8 cords in the middle. And you guessed it, we're going to attach 2 floating square knots on either side of this row. And just like we were doing previously, we're going to take the first cord and we're going to tie our 2 vertical double half hitch knots, as well as with the last cord, tie 2 vertical double half hitch knots. Alright, so this is as large as I'm going to make my pineapple. So if you want a wider pineapple, you would repeat the same row, only you'll have 3 square knots in the center. So because I'm not increasing mine, I'm going to leave the first 2 and the last 2 cords off to the side, tie my 3 square knots in the center, but I'm not adding another 2 floating square knots. I'm just going to leave those 2 cords on both sides alone. Now, because I didn't add those 2 floating square knots, I'm not going to tie my vertical double half hitch knots. For this row, I'm just going to do a straight row all the way across with just regular square knots. You should have a total of 4 square knots all the way across in this row if you did not increase it. Once you've tied all 4 of your square knots, we're going to tie our 2 vertical double half hitch knots on either side. Now, I don't know about you, but pineapples are one of my most favorite fruit of all time. However, when I was pregnant with my daughter, I was way overdue, and I heard that if you eat pineapple cores, it would help bring on labor. And I kid you not, I mowed down 3 pineapple cores and I did the good old curb walking trick, and nope, no labor. So nope, I cannot vouch for the pineapple core trick, and it was nasty. Okay, so carrying on, for this row, we're going to skip the first 2 and the last 2 cords, and we're going to tie 3 square knots in the center. For the next row, we're going to tie 4 square knots in the center. Next, we're going to tie our 2 vertical double half hitch knots on either side of our pineapple keychain. But after that, we're going to start decreasing our rows. Let me show you what I mean. So with the first 2 and the last 2 cords, the ones that we tied our vertical double half hitch knots with, we're going to move those up and out of the way. Then we're going to tie 3 regular square knots right in the middle. Next, we're going to tie our vertical double half hitch knots on either side of our pineapple again. And we're still decreasing, so with these strands of cords on either side, we're going to lift them up and out of the way again. Alright, so we're going to skip the first two and the last two cords and tie 2 square knots right in the center. Next, we're going to do our final set of vertical double half hitch knots. And remember, make sure it is a right facing vertical double half hitch knot followed by a left facing vertical double half hitch knot, and then mirrored on the opposite side. And don't forget to lift those cords up and out of the way. Now to finish off the bottom, we're going to tie just regular double half hitch knots. We don't need to decrease anymore. However, if you do decrease, it'll probably look a little bit more like a lemon than a pineapple. So if you want to adjust this tutorial to make it more of a lemon shape, you can go ahead and do that. But I suppose you'd have to alter what the leaves look like on top, since our pineapple here has a crown and lemons typically do not. Anyways, about our pineapple keychain, when you're finishing off the bottom, you want to tie 3 double half hitch knots going towards the center on either side. You will find at the very end you should have 4 yellow cords that are not worked. And don't worry about that, we will get there. So at this point, you want to lift up 2 strands of your green and then snip off 2 of the other strands. And you want to snip them very close to where your double half hitch knots are. You can go ahead and bring those 2 green cords down, and we're going to cross them over slightly so that they overlap, and then snip them off, leaving a tiny little bit of a tail where they overlap. Next, I'm going to fuse them together by melting them. Please be very careful during this part. This will join your 2 green cords together. Next, we're going to grab our tapestry needle and thread our very first yellow cord that was not worked. And what we're doing here is we're completing our double half hitch knots with the help of our tapestry needle. But a warning here, be very careful when you're pulling it taut. You do not want to break the fuse of your green cords. Repeat this until you've tied all of your remainder yellow cords. Snip off the excess length, leaving a tiny bit of a tail, and melt it towards the back of your pineapple keychain. Now, if you happen to make this macrame pineapple keychain, feel free to tag me on Instagram. I would absolutely love to see it, and I just may give you a feature. But until then, I'll see you in the next one.